Now my eyes are laughing, and I can't stop singing. You make my day. You make my day. Empty pages filled at last. All my troubles in the past. Don't you know you make my day so lovely? We don't mind the falling leaves as long as there's still you and me. Darling, you will make each day so lovely. You make me feel like dancing. Now my eyes are laughing, and I can't stop singing. You make my day. You make my day. You say that I go out to get you off my mind. We've been done for a while now, and honestly, I'm fine. It's not a game but you are losing. When I'm with someone else and I'm not missing us. If I can live without you, sue me. Somebody told me that you think I'm trying to make you jealous, jealous. I do better things with my time than trying to make you jealous, jealous. Why can't we move on with our lives? I know you'd rather know that I'm home alone and in my bed and sleeping with someone new, that treats me better than you did. But it's not a game that you are losing. When I'm with someone else and I'm not missing us. If I can live without you, sue me. Somebody told me that you think I'm trying to make you jealous, jealous. I do better things with my time than trying to make you jealous, jealous. Why can't we move on with our lives? Yeah, I've played it out, the pain that I shouldered over and over. I'll see you around when we get older, even though it's over now. Feelings that I know are wrong. Oh, I can meet it if I'm strong. I keep on playing through the long nights, that's right, all night. Lord, I've got nowhere else to go. I'm awake at 3 a.m.
Hello everyone, good to see everyone here so far. Although we have 8 people here, we're just gonna wait a little bit until a few more people come in and then we'll get started. Good afternoon, Mac. Good afternoon, Camilla. Good afternoon, Chris. We're just gonna wait around 3 minutes for people to come in and then we'll get started. We had a few people late in my morning class, so we'll wait a little bit. Good morning, Alexandra. Good morning. Good afternoon, Alexandra. Good afternoon, Emily. Good afternoon, Gia. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Hi, Anna. Good to see you. Alright, just one more minute and then we'll get started. One more minute. Hopefully you guys have printed out the worksheet for today. Today is 3.3. We're doing 3.3. Hello, Hart. Hello, Hans. Good to see both of you here as well. All right, I think we're good to get started. That should be 13 people here. Adrian, well, good. If you just woke up, that's perfect. You made it just in time for math. Good afternoon, John. Good to see you here too. All right, just making sure my settings are all good to go. And I think we are okay. Awesome. All right, let's get started. So this is the worksheet you should have printed out here. Oh, that's not on. Technical difficulties here. It'll show up very soon or very shortly. Give it 1 second. There it is. Haha. All right. So 3.3, making a scatter plot. This is what you should have printed out. If you don't have it, or if you have a piece of paper, or just go print it out quickly right now. Okay. All right. So today's lesson, fairly on the shorter end, I think. Should be around 40 minutes. Assuming we get through this pretty quickly. But yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. So as long as everyone pays attention and writes things down, I think we should be done very soon. Okay. So 3.3, making a scatter plot. So a scatter plot is a graph that shows the, let me zoom in here. Relationship between two variables, right? So we talked about relationship previously, how it's just the explanation and the connection. Like, is there a comparison between two things, right? Can we compare this and that? Is there a connection between this and that? And so that would be our relationship. That's our relationship we're looking about. And a scatter plot is a graph that shows that. Okay. The points in a scatter plot often show a pattern or what we call a trend. And we used trend words, right? We used trend words to help describe what we were talking about here. So, for example, some of the trend words that we used, once again, positive or negative, strong or weak, linear, non-linear, or no trend at all, right? And so using the pattern or trend, you describe the relationship. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here. Okay, so hopefully we have all this written down. So let's go down here. I gotta zoom out just a little bit. All right, so our example here, Julie gathered information about her age and height from the markings on the wall in her house. So the age in years is on top and the height is on bottom. Now the one thing you have to understand, if I ever give you a chart like this, right, X will always be on top, Y will always be on bottom, 100% of the time. I will never give it to you otherwise. Okay, 100%, X is always on top, Y is always on bottom. Now, in the cases that the chart would be like vertical, like this, right, then X would be on the left, Y would be on the right. And you'll see more examples of that later. I think there's an example coming up later with the vertical chart. Okay, so it says here, label the vertical axes. So the vertical axes here is this one here. So that's our vertical. And we should know that the vertical axis is our Y, right? So if you don't have that, then this would, if we know it's Y, then this would be our height in centimeters. Okay, so that's our height in centimeters. And so we're essentially just copying down our label here from our table, and we're putting it right into that box. We're labeling our vertical axes because Y should go where Y is. And so That's our height in centimeters. Okay. Part B, describe the trend. Okay. So looking at this graph here, first word, positive or negative? Well, it's going up towards the right, so the first word I would say is positive. And then second, strong or weak. This would definitely be, I think, strong. Right? The points are pretty close together, so that would be a strong trend. And then is it linear or nonlinear? And if I put my ruler and see this imaginary line, if you see this line right there, I'd say that's pretty linear. It's not really a curve. So that would be positive, strong, linear. Okay. So let's describe the relationship now. So since we already now have the trend, we can now describe the relationship. So the trend is just using those words, right? 3 words, around up to 3 words to describe, the general idea of the pattern that we see. The relationship, Russell asked yesterday and 2 days ago, what does it mean by describing relationship? Well, this is where you explain it with a sentence. So actually using the titles here, like age and height, right? So what I would say here, as Julie gets older, Julie gets taller. That's the relationship. So yes, it's positive, strong, and linear. It's going up towards the right. But when we describe the relationship, we have to use what we're comparing. And we were comparing her height and her age. So as Julie gets older, as her age goes up, right, Julie will get taller. That's the idea. Okay? So that being said, we can keep going here. Are there any questions on this? I think we're good. So variables. The independent variable. If you don't have ink in your printer, you just got to work with what you got. Write down these words or print it later in the future. Like go out and buy ink. Independent variable is located on the x-axis, and x is your horizontal, right? This is our horizontal axis. And our dependent variable is located on the y-axis, which is our vertical. Okay? So in our situation, in this case, our independent variable was here, our horizontal axis, which would be age in years for this example. And for the dependent variable, which was our y up here, so our dependent variable would be height in not years, centimeters. Okay? And that's our first page already. Pretty simple. Not bad, right? So let's go over this first page again. Okay? Let's just quickly go over this first page before we move on. Okay? Scatter plot is a graph that shows the relationship between two variables. Okay? The points in a scatter plot show a pattern or trend. And from that trend, you can describe the relationship. And we said here, our trend is when we use those 3 words, positive or negative, strong or weak, linear or non-linear. Or if you don't see a pattern, it would just be no trend. And the relationship would be a full sentence answer, right? Using what we are comparing. So I specified that as she gets older, Julie will get taller, right? And so I'm using what we are comparing to write my answer. That's my relationship. And so we talked here, our independent variable is on the x-axis, which is our age, and the dependent variable is on our y-axis, which is our height, which is up here. Okay? So that's the basic understanding of what a scatter plot should have and how to even think of making one. Now, this page here. Plot the data on the scatter plot below, choosing appropriate scales and labels. There's a lot of space here. Okay. Now, the one thing I want you to first notice on this side here, we have age as X. We have earnings as Y. So, like I said, if it's a vertical plot here, then age, your X will always be on the left, your Y will always be on the right. Okay? So the first thing I want you to do right away, and since you know age is X, you should be writing that title down here. And of course, this would be in years. So you write your title and you write the units if you have it, right? So age, boom, that goes down there. Earnings in dollars. So let's do earnings here. And I'll do dollars here. Okay. So there's our earnings in dollars. So that's what I have so far. So once again, when you create a scatter plot, the first thing you should be doing is labeling your axes. That should be the first thing. It's like the easiest thing you can do. The second easiest thing is your title, right? We always need to have a title for our graphs. And in science, specifically, your science teachers will be very picky about this title. If you're unsure what to write for your title, and you're like, I don't know how to write a good title, it's always going to be Y versus X. Always. So, and what I mean by Y is, well, we're going to actually use our titles here, right? So for us, a simple title would be earnings versus age. That would be our title here. Okay? So earnings versus age. Now, a big issue here is that we do not start from 0. We start at 25, which means there's this gap, right? From 0 to 25, right? That the issue here is that, well, 0 to 25, what do we do with that gap? Do I write it down? Do I not write it down? And so there's this special thing called a break. Okay, so let's look at the note down here. The symbol, and the symbol is kind of like a zigzag here, like that, is used to signal a break in the axis when the scale does not start at 0 to avoid a large empty space in one corner of the graph. We're going to need 2 breaks. So first, let's figure out our scale here. Since we're skipping 0 to 25, I'm going to put my break there. So I'm going to zoom in here real quick so you can see. You'll notice I put my break right there before my first tick. And my first number I'm going to start at, I'm going to say is 25. Okay, so that's my first number. So what this break is telling me is that from 0 to 25, I can ignore it. I don't want to have 0 to 25. I'm ignoring 0 to 25. It is irrelevant for us. Okay, so looking at our table, we need to go from 25 all the way to 75. Okay, so now let's think, okay, what are some gaps we can use? Let's do, let's see. I'll go up by 5. I think that will include all of the numbers that we need. So 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, and 80. Well, we don't need to go to 80 because 75 is our last number. But look at how I've created my scale. The one thing you have to understand, every time there's a number, it goes up by equal square amounts, right? It's every 2 squares is 5. That's important. Okay? 80% of the mistakes on creating graphs comes from improper scales. I am very, very picky with proper scales. Whatever number of squares you start at the beginning, that better be the amount of squares you start and skip every time. If you're saying every 2 squares is going to be going up by 5, you better start on that second square. Because there's so many people that start on the first from previous years. Okay? So, we have that there. For us on the y-axis here, okay, our lowest number is 22,000. And the highest number is not this one, right? You'll notice the highest number is actually here, 43,000. Okay? So I do know, once again, I'm going to need another break. And so if I zoom in down here, one more time, you'll notice I've put a break also in the y-axis. Okay, so I put a break in the x because the x-axis needed a break. And then the y-axis also needs one. And then I'm going to start at 22,000. Okay. So if I keep going, notice how I'm not just copying these numbers down. You're not copying the numbers. If you copy the numbers, you're going to be wrong. Okay? They're not going up by the same amount all the time. All right? So, I need to get all the way up to 43,000. So let's go up by 2,000 each time. I'm running out of space here, so I'll write a little smaller. And there. So I've drawn my scale from 22,000 all the way to 44,000 to include 43,000, right? And so every 2 squares is 2,000 increase. And so if I zoom out, this is what you should have. Okay? So what I want you to do, let's make sure you know how to do this. I want you to plot this on here. If you have it printed out, I want you to plot it. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do so. And then I will plot it myself so you can compare your graph to mine. Okay? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. It's going to come on the screen now. And I'm going to get rid of my webcam. So 5 minutes. You can start now, and we'll take it up.
Loving is too much, yeah. And you say our games are proof that we've both had enough. It's tough, 'cause I can't relate. I can't relate to fell in love was cold. You touched my face, my mind began to run. Yeah, but you don't care now. You tell me it's all said and done. I'm numb, I can't relate. No, I can't relate to you. Call out my name, call out my name, 'cause I can't relate. can relate.
All right. Hopefully you guys have finished. Okay. So let's plot these points real quick. And then we can move on. So 25, 22,000. 30, 26,500. 35, 29,500. 29,000 for 40. Oh no, so sorry. 37, 29,000. 38 is 30,000. 40 is 32,000. 41 is 35,000. 45 is 36,000. 55 is 41,000. 60 is also 41,000. 62 is 42.5. 65 is 43,000. Oh, actually, that's too high. Ignore that one. That should be down here. Then it's here. Then 70 is 37,000. And then 75 is 37,500. There we go. Now, of course, it might be a little difficult for you to kind of see, like, oh, is this the right line or something like that. What helps, I did it by eye, of course, but what also helps is if you have a ruler, it's very easy to kind of follow along, to go vertically upwards to draw your points, right? So if I'm at 70,000, it's kind of like my eyes start straining, like trying to keep the same line. So it helps to line up here, right? So that you know that's the 70 line. And then for 70,000, it was 3,700, so 37,000, so it would be all the way across that way, right? And there's your point. So there are easier ways to graph points, but this should be what your graph looks like. This is your ideal graph so far. Okay? Now, part 1 says draw a line of best fit. Okay? This is something you haven't done before, and we're going to be touching upon it again. But the idea here is when it asks you to draw a line of best fit, it's asking if you take a ruler or if you're looking at this trend, where do you see the line going through the most points as possible? Okay? But the other thing you have to realize is maybe not all the points are normal. These 2 points in particular are kind of outside of the regular group. I call this outliers. And an outlier is essentially like the points that don't really fit the regular pattern. Okay? So what I mean by that, for example, let's make this real for you. I'm sure you guys have that one friend that barely studies but gets 100%. That's not normal. We know that's not normal. Okay? That is not normal. Or maybe you are that person, but regardless, that's not normal. The normal pattern is that if you study a lot, you get a higher mark, right? So the idea here is that anyone who doesn't fit that regular pattern is an outlier, right? So the person that barely studies and gets 100% would be an outlier. But at the same time, someone who studies a lot but gets like 0% is also an outlier, because that's just weird and you're doing something wrong. Okay? So an outlier is any points that you feel in the data that's like, hey, I don't think that's part of the regular pattern. You can ignore that when you talk about your trend. So this would cause the trend to go downwards, right? Which is kind of weird. But if we ignore it, we can kind of see a regular pattern in our dots. And so we can now ignore this and then look at our line of best fit. So our line of best fit is going to be taking your ruler and seeing where does it go through or get close to as many points as possible. So if I draw this line, whoops, it's the dark green line, right? This dark green line would be that accurate or as close to it as many points as possible. That's our line of best fit. That's number 1. Okay? So, if we were to choose some words to describe this, right? Down here, it says describe the trend. Is it positive or negative? Well, it's definitely positive. It's going up. Is it strong or weak? This one, people might argue, I would go more towards strong, only because we took out those outliers. If we put the outliers in, we would say weak. But since we're ignoring them, saying that these are not normal, right? Then we can say it's strong. And of course, we would say it's linear because we drew this line of best fit that goes to as many points as possible. Okay? Now, does the data support the hypothesis? Give reasons to support your answer. So let's go back up here. The hypothesis was the older you are, the more money you earn. Okay? The older you are, the more money you earn. Is that true? Okay? So I'm going to make a poll for you guys. Okay? Is the hypothesis true by looking at the graph? Yes. No. So check this poll. If you are on a computer, you should be able to open up that poll in a new tab and vote. Yes or no. Is the hypothesis true? Okay. So click on that link and vote what you believe. So by looking at this graph, is that hypothesis true? Yes or no? The older you are, the more money you make. Votes are coming in. We got 6 votes, 7 votes for yes so far. I'll wait for a couple more. All right. Fantastic. So no one voted no, which is great. So does the data support the hypothesis? Yes, absolutely. Right? As right? As people got older, they made more money, right? So that's the idea here. We can look at the trend and see it's positive, right? Positive trend means that as age goes up, the earnings go up. So both things are going up, right? So now let's talk about number 3. Explain why the data for ages over 65 do not correspond with the hypothesis. Okay? Explain why the data for ages over 65. So that was these two. What would be some reasons why when you're 65 and older you would make less money? What's a reason? If any, you can type it in chat. Any ideas that might pop into your head? What might cause people over 65 to make less money? Retirement, that's a good one. I like that. Anyone else? Any other ideas? Retirement's a very big one. That's probably what came up into most people's minds. There could be a lot of reasons. Sure, right? Physical condition. Getting weak is definitely a physical condition, right? Lower energy, so on and so forth. Like, there could be a whole bunch of reasons. I'm sure you can list a lot of reasons for senior citizens maybe making less money, possibly, right? Retirement would be the biggest one, and physical conditions would be the second, right? Whether it's getting weaker, having less energy, ailments, something like that. But that's our guess, right? That would be our explanation. Can you explain to me, when you think about it, you're like, oh, what might be some reasons, right? This is your communication part, right? Can you communicate to me? Can you tell me or think about any reasons that might give this outcome on our data? Okay. And the last thing for today, explain what this point represents. So what did X represent? This is our X, right? All coordinates are written in X, Y. What does X represent? What is X? Anyone? What does X represent? What does that number represent? Not earnings. Be careful. X. X is our horizontal axis. What does our X represent? Age. Exactly. Right? So this is age. So the 41 is age, which means this must mean that a person who is 41 years old makes, and then Y would be our earnings. And so that would be our $35,000. Okay? And that's fine. Don't worry. But now you know a person who is 41 years old makes $35,000. When I ask you what the point represents, you should be able to tell me, oh, I know that 41 represents age, right? So that's 41 years old. And that person, Y is earnings. So that person makes $35,000. Oh, I know, Mr. Choi, this is what that point means, right? You need to be able to tell me that. If you're able to tell me that, then you understand what these coordinates means in terms of a word problem. Okay? So, that being said, type a G in the chat if you're like, I think I get this at like 60% or higher. Okay? 60% or higher, I get this. I understand this. You're like 60% or higher, I definitely think I understand this. Perfect. Very good. It's good to see like most of the people typing G. If you did not type G, don't worry. You have a lot of time over the weekend to review and watch the video again to kind of relearn it. Okay? So, that's our lesson for today, which means your homework, your home fun, here, this page here. Okay? We're going to be taking this up on Tuesday. So there is no class on Friday. There is no class on Monday. It's Good Friday and Easter Monday. Enjoy your long weekend. Okay? I'm definitely going to be enjoying mine as much as possible. I'm probably going to be gaming as much as I can, but you know, that's me. But once again, this is homework. Do it. Do you understand? Do the homework. Okay? This here. Okay? This is due on Tuesday. If you can write it down somewhere, okay? And if you can print it out before Tuesday, that'd be great. Okay, so you have 2 graphs that you can try drawing and practice with drawing. You have some questions here at the top with identifying independent and dependent variables. Okay. And you have a quiz next week. Whether that's going to be on the Tuesday or the Wednesday, I don't know yet. I have to decide. But just know that if you do your homework, you should be okay. All right? So, that's our class for today. Once again, no class tomorrow, no class on Monday. So you have the long weekend and you're good to go. All right? So, thank you for tuning in, everyone. Have a good one. And I'll see you next Tuesday. Peace out.